y'all, Dixie here. Today I want to talk about a thru hiker's biggest regrets. Looking back in time on my thru hikes, I have to say that they were absolutely incredible experiences. But I think for all of us who have thru hiked a trail, we have lessons that we learned, or maybe even minimal regrets that we would probably warn somebody about if they were an aspiring thru hiker. So I asked some of my fellow thru hikers to chime in about their biggest regrets on trail. So hopefully that can help some of y'all going forward. One of the big regrets that some thru hikers have is not hiking their own hike. I've grown to hate this saying because a lot of times people use it just to be a jerk, you know, like, mind your own business, I can steal this wallet if I want to, hike your own hike. I don't know that that exact example has ever happened, but you get my drift. But hike your own hike is a saying that was created with good intention, and it simply means enjoy the freedom of the trail to do what you want to do when you want to do it. That's one of the most awesome things, in my opinion, about thru hiking is in life you normally have so many rules and so many have-tos, but out on trail, you just have to do whatever you want to do. But oftentimes when we're around other people, we can get caught up in things that prevent us from really doing what we want to do. So I'll caution you against those. The first one right out of the gate is agreeing to start a thru hike with a hiking partner. Now, if you've already planned to start a thru hike and you've got a hiking partner, I'm not saying call them right now and break up with them as your partner, but I think it's important to lay out some ground rules and boundaries. Have you had the conversation of what happens if y'all end up wanting to hike at different speeds, or if you want to take 2 zeros in town and they only want to take 1, or if somebody gets injured and has to get off trail? So whether this is a friend, somebody that you've paired up with in a hiking club, or your significant other, I do think that those conversations are important, because if you don't have them ahead of time, then you might get guilted into slowing down or be forced to speed up, or just adjust to what somebody else wants you to do and therefore not hiking your own hike. This same thing can also happen with people who form tramilies. Having a tramily or a trail family is an awesome thing. A lot of times you've got a tramily that is made up of so many different types of people, because while you might think there's one stereotypical hiker, there really isn't. You might have an 18-year-old boy and a 71-year-old woman, and people from all different walks of life that are out there thru hiking for different reasons. And then you all bunch together because it seems like you have a lot in common and like you're doing some similar miles, etc. But at some point that may change for you. And if you find yourself in that situation where you've been around this group and now you almost feel some sort of pressure to stick with them, don't do that to yourself. It can be real easy to get caught up in that, and the group will decide we're doing this, but ultimately you went out there as your own person. So while you had a good time with them, you are still free to break off and continue your hike the way you want to do it. And if they're not cool with that, well, then they weren't that good of a tramily anyway. Another thing that I think prevents people from hiking their own hike is worrying about what everybody else is doing. This might not necessarily be a tramily situation, but you just hear people saying, well, I'm already doing 20 miles a day and you've only been doing about 14 a day. Or maybe you're kind of sore and you hear somebody else saying, I'm not that sore, I don't think I'm going to take a 0 in whatever trail town, and you've been thinking, man, I really need to take a 0, but now I don't know. If these people are doing no zeros and more miles, well then I have to too, or I'll never get to the end. But don't do that to yourself. Hike your own hike and the miles will come. Otherwise, an injury will come and you might end up off trail because you were a busybody worrying about what everybody else was doing. And finally, I would like to caution you against having commitments for other people to meet you out on trail and do sections with you. And I know right now, sitting at home, before you get out there on your thru hike, it might sound like a good idea to have old Bessie Sue from kindergarten that's been your best friend forever meet you out in such and such section to do a week, and she's gonna block that week off with work, and you've already got plans to meet her at this exact spot and do a week, and she'll get off at that exact spot. Oh, what a nightmare. You might end up going through that section and you're really hanging out with some cool people that you've enjoyed meeting and spending time with, like a Tramily, or you might be really enjoying the physical challenge of increasing your mileage because you want to, not because you feel pressured by other people. And now you have to deal with the logistics of being at a certain place at a certain time, and it just ends up being a headache. So I'm not saying that you won't want to do that when you get out there, but don't commit to that. Allow yourself the flexibility of not having to do that. And if it works out, then great. And if you decide you don't want to do it, you're not tied to it. Something else a lot of thru hikers say they regret once they get off trail is not taking the time to smell the roses. I think a lot of us are so used to normal life in today's times where we get up and we go do a job and we work so many hours and then we go home and we rest and we do it all again tomorrow. And so a lot of folks, myself included, I was guilty of this, try to make thru hiking their job. But it's not your job. Unless you want to have that structure on the trail, you don't necessarily have to have that exact structure. You can decide you're gonna wake up before the sun and get some hiking in and take a 3-hour lunch and then hike into the dark. Or you can be like me, wake up late, also take a lot of breaks during the day and then end up not hiking. But I think a lot of us get so caught up in what's at the end and getting there that we don't actually take the time to really enjoy the beautiful sights that we're seeing. So while you're out there, if you come to a beautiful spot and you're about to blow right past it, maybe stop and really soak it in for a minute so at the end you don't have the same regret that many of us have had. I think another form of this, not stopping and smelling the roses, is turning down trail magic. This is not something that I specifically recall doing, but it is something that people mentioned when I asked this question. And in particular, there was somebody who said a trail angel offered them a place to stay and a meal, and they turned it down so that they could make more miles that day. And man, that's so unfortunate, because some of the best experiences I've had is going to stay with a trail angel and allowing them to cook dinner for you and learn about them and their lives and tell them your stories and hear about other hikers they've helped in the past. And meeting the different people along the way is one of my favorite experiences of a thru hike. So it makes me sad for this person that they did turn that down. So never turn down trail magic. I have been tempted to turn down trail magic before, especially coming out of a town when I have a really full food bag and my pack is really heavy and I'm like, man, I would love to have some snacks here, but gosh, I have so much. Just sit down and drink a Coke or, eat some piece of candy or whatever, because chances are later in that stretch, you're gonna regret that decision to not have those calories. Another one, which kind of ties into the smelling the roses, a lot of people said not taking zeros or taking zeros, because I do think there is a fine line between feeling like you took too many zeros and you could have maybe gone a little bit slower and enjoyed being on actual trail a little bit more. But there are some people who really just breeze through and finish their thru hike and they get to the end in July or August and they're like, man, I really could have stretched this out and taken some more zeros and relaxed a little bit more. So again, I think that there is a fine line between too many zeros or maybe not enough zeros, but it really depends on the individual. One regret that thru hikers often have is something I was actually warned about ahead of time, and that regret is not taking enough pictures of people. I think a lot of us look at a pretty mountain view and we're like, oh, so pretty mountain, ooh, a pretty tree. And then we get back home and we flip through and we have all of these pictures of nature. But when I'm reminiscing, what I really think about the most is the people. So even though it might be awkward, just take those selfies with people, or, if folks are setting up their tents, snap those pictures, because those are the moments that you're gonna remember in your mind, and having the pictures to look back on and verify that it actually happened, because sometimes to me, a thru hike feels like it was just a dream. Another common regret is not preparing mentally for what comes after the hike. This was also something that I was tipped off about, that a lot of times people don't have a plan for after, and not necessarily go get a job, but what do you have to look forward to after the trail? Because you're gonna go through this life-changing experience that's so epic that you can tell people about it, but they won't understand unless they've been there. And you get back home and you've changed so much, even though you look like the same person, but everyone back home really hasn't changed, or at least not as much as you in that time period. And so it can be really hard readjusting back to normal life. So it's definitely important to plan for that. And what I did, because I had been warned about this, is I started making a list of things that I was excited to do when I got back home. And I just entered it in the notes on my phone. I wanted to read more about a certain topic, or there might be a book that I wanted to read, or some place that I wanted to go visit in my hometown, etc. So by the time I got home and I started to get into that slump or feel like post-trail depression was creeping in, I just go to my phone, pick a thing, and try to delve into that and get my mind off of missing the trail. I do have a video about post-trail depression that I will put in the video description of this video. So if you want to plan for that ahead of time, then maybe you can even prevent it from happening. But how fitting that right now we're at the end of thru hiking season. So if somebody is watching this and they feel like they're a little down in the dumps since they've gotten done with their thru hike, or they're in a full-on post-trail depression, there's a lady named Wendy who's been doing a virtual gathering for hikers who are experiencing that and want somebody to relate to who's also going through it. So if you want to learn more about that or participate in it, then you can contact her. Another big regret of many thru hikers is not starting sooner, like in life, not their start date on trail, but they wish that they were younger when they had first started thru hiking. This may sound crazy to some of y'all, but I can relate to this because I was 28 years old when I started my first thru hike of the Appalachian Trail. And I met a fella who became one of my family members named Mountain Goat. He was 18 years old out there starting his first thru hike, and he actually hadn't even graduated high school yet. He had finished all of his classes and everything in December, so he wasn't obligated to actually be at school that spring, but he did go home for a quick trip to go to prom and to graduation. But I remember being envious because he was 10 years ahead of me in the game. But I don't think that it's really fair to beat ourselves up like that, because the fact is, if you're out there, you're already ahead of the game, because there are so many people who will never go out and do anything like that. And if you're ever feeling down on yourself, just remember that Grandma Gatewood was 67 years old when she did her first thru hike in 1955. And right now there's Nimblewell Nomad who's out on the Appalachian Trail breaking the record for the oldest man to thru hike the Appalachian Trail, and he's in his 80s. So again, just appreciate that you found it when you did. It could have been later and you still have some time as long as you can walk and fog a mirror. And finally, the top biggest regret of thru hikers was not finishing. Only about 20 to 25% of people who begin a thru hike actually finish it. And if you're one of those people who is sitting at home right now having any sort of guilt or embarrassment or regret over not finishing a trail, I just want to say, but you started. There are a lot of people who will dream about attempting a thru hike right up to their deathbed, and they never get out there and do it. So the fact that you had the courage and that you were able to arrange things in your life to allow yourself to get out there and attempt that kind of adventure, well, that says a lot about you. If you have yet to attempt a thru hike, but you've got plans for a thru hike in the future and you're wondering, well, why do people quit the trail? You know, how can I prevent this from happening? Well, there are several different reasons why somebody might quit, like money. They run out of money. It definitely takes a hefty budget or somebody who manages budgets well to get out there and make it happen financially. Also, injuries, which that could be from not hiking your own hike and not listening to your body and trying to rush things too much. But there are certainly injuries that come about just by happenstance. And finally, I think a lot of quitting a thru hike happens because it's easy to quit on a bad day. If you've got several days of rain and you're miserable and then your tent gets torn up, or you twist your ankle and you're feeling kind of homesick, a lot of those things can stack up and just make you say, forget it, I want to go home. And then several months later, you're sitting there regretting that you didn't finish it. So if you want to learn more about why people do quit the trail and maybe how you can prevent that, I'll put a link to a video I've done on that topic in the video description as well. But again, if you're watching this and you are somebody who attempted the trail but did not complete it the first go round, I think if you're the type of person who made it happen the first time to get out there and try, then if it's still something you're interested in, you can do it again. I have faith in you. All right, y'all, well, that is all I have for you today. If you are a thru hiker and you're watching this and you're like, hey, I had a trail regret that Dixie didn't mention, go ahead and throw it in the comments below so that maybe other people who are looking at thru hiking in the future can learn from your mistakes. Thank y'all so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to subscribe before you go, and we will see y'all next time.